Hello, I'm Jessica, a 30-year-old woman. I want to share a recent experience that helped me through a tough time with my husband and his family. This happened a few months ago, and even though things have calmed down, I'm still working through the emotions. I think talking about it might help me heal. Let's go back 3 years when I made a big decision, marrying my boyfriend Tyler. We met through friends and had 3 great years together before getting married. Tyler was fun, caring, and loving. He came from a wealthy family and had a good job, so he often bought me gifts and showed me affection. We both loved to travel, which made our bond stronger. As we got more serious, my friends were happy for us and praised Tyler. Tyler was very generous, sometimes too much. For example, he bought me a new laptop when I graduated college. I felt uneasy about not being able to spend as much as he did. I'd say, "Tyler, I'm just a college student. I can't match your spending. Let's try to split other costs at least." But Tyler would insist on treating me, saying his friends did the same for their partners. Over time, I got used to it but still tried to contribute as much as I could. After I got a good job, we started sharing expenses more equally and even talked about moving in together. One day, Tyler suggested, "You can move in with me. I inherited my house from my grandpa, so no worries about rent, but we should split other expenses to keep things fair." Even though I was unsure, he reassured me and we began living together. We agreed to share the financial responsibilities fairly given our different incomes, and everything was going well until I met Tyler's family. They lived far away, and since Tyler was busy with work, I had to host his parents and sister alone. Tyler warned me they could be judgmental but didn't go into details. He suggested I ignore any hurtful comments. I tried to stay positive, but my optimism faded when they arrived. Instead of a warm welcome, Tyler's parents and sister seemed annoyed. This set a tense atmosphere. During our conversations, it was clear they didn't like me. "So you're the woman Tyler has been seeing," Tyler's mother, Martha, said disapprovingly. "I didn't expect to find you in this house. Do you even pay rent?" "No, Martha, I don't pay rent," I explained. Tyler said the house is paid for, but we split all other bills evenly. I hoped this would clear things up, but Martha dismissed it. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can mooch off him. This is his house, not yours. Remember that for the rest of your life." The conversation got more uncomfortable, especially with Tyler's sister, Teresa, who glared at me more than she talked. When I asked about her life, she mentioned being married to a wealthy billionaire and brushed me off. During their visit, Tyler didn't support me and seemed to side with his family. Gabrielle and Martha kept criticizing me, making the visit hard. They disapproved of my spending on makeup and skincare, saying it was wrong since they thought I didn't contribute enough financially. Tyler's comments didn't help. He'd say things like, "Jessica was a struggling student when we first met," implying I depended on him a lot, which wasn't entirely true. He'd mention how he paid for everything early on because my job didn't cover my taste for luxury. I was shocked and reminded him we now split our bills equally. I explained that I had always lived simply, both before and during our relationship. Any luxury items I had were gifts from Tyler, which I often told him not to buy because they were too extravagant. Tyler justified his spending by saying his social status required him to give fancy gifts, showing that his generosity was more about impressing his friends than caring for me. After his family left, I confronted Tyler about how they treated me. Unfortunately, he brushed it off. "Don't take it to heart, Jessica. They meant well. You're overreacting," he said, dismissing my concerns. Despite my doubts, Tyler proposed 5 months later, and I happily accepted. We planned an engagement party and split the costs. I was running a small side business that Tyler knew about but never asked much about. For me, it was more of a fulfilling hobby than a big moneymaker. When it was time to organize our engagement party, I decided to treat myself a bit, and Tyler supported the idea. We shared the expenses, and I even covered plane tickets for my extended family. However, during the party, the criticisms resurfaced. "You shouldn't have spent so much on this party, Jessica," Martha said. "You're draining Tyler's account before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding. I thought you were financially irresponsible, but it's worse than I thought." I stood my ground, saying, "The party was extravagant, but we both agreed to it. I paid my share, and it was actually Tyler's idea to include everyone. He insisted and didn't mind the expense." But the criticism continued. Martha accused me of manipulating Tyler into spending too much. Teresa chimed in. saying I should have been more considerate. Frustrated, I excused myself and went to the lawn to find some peace. There, I overheard Teresa and her husband Justin laughing at me. It felt like my engagement party was falling apart, and Tyler seemed unaware of his family's harsh judgments. Most of his extended family thought I was jobless and dependent on Tyler. My mom, noticing my distress, approached me and suggested I reconsider the engagement due to the ongoing mean comments from Tyler's family. After the party, I confronted Tyler about the situation. He brushed it off as a joke and expressed his love, saying financial matters didn't concern him. I told him I wanted to contribute more, especially towards rent, but he dismissed the idea. As we planned the wedding, the stress increased. Tyler's parents continued to criticize me, accusing me of bankrupting their son. Their constant scrutiny made the engagement period very challenging. I made it clear that everyone, including my mom, was helping with the wedding expenses. However, Martha accused me of taking advantage of Tyler and trying to deplete his bank account, branding me a gold digger. I tried to reassure Gabriel, saying, "Gabriel, I'm not asking for any financial help. We can finance the wedding ourselves." But despite my explanations, Teresa criticized the cost of my dress and makeup on the wedding day, even though my mother covered those expenses. The wedding ceremony went smoothly, but at the reception, Martha and Gabriel continued to criticize my spending habits, accusing me of financially exploiting Tyler. Despite their harsh words, I stayed silent to avoid ruining our special day. A few months later, Tyler got a significant promotion at work and wanted to celebrate with a grand family dinner. I was excited for him and decided to cover all the expenses myself. "Tyler, I want this dinner to be extraordinary. I'm so proud of you and want to celebrate your success," I told him. Tyler appreciated my gesture, and I told him my business was doing well. I had a stable income from my job and recently accessed a trust fund from my paternal grandfather. I planned the event meticulously to make it perfect. However, when his family arrived, they were unhappy with the arrangements. Despite positive feedback from other guests, his family seemed to disapprove of the celebration's lavishness. During the speeches, Martha stood up and, with her voice carrying across the room, began criticizing. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my son. He's hardworking and generous, and he really deserves this promotion. Unfortunately, he made a poor choice in his partner. It's sad that he ended up with someone who acts like a gold digger. I wish he had seen her true nature earlier. Then he wouldn't have to work so hard to support her expensive lifestyle." Martha continued, her voice full of regret. "It's clear to everyone here that his wife has been very extravagant. From the engagement party to tonight's dinner, she has almost drained his accounts." Feeling hurt, I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Martha added, "Thank goodness we had Jessica sign a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. At least some of his assets are protected." She seemed relieved, saying it was good her son married someone who could at least look like a trophy wife. Tyler agreed with his mother. "I can't even afford to spend money on myself anymore. There's nothing left," he said. He called marrying me a mistake and compared me unfavorably to others. Shocked and frustrated, I finally spoke up. "Do you really think I'm a gold digger?" Tyler's response was cutting. "Your lifestyle is quite damaging to my bank account." Determined to clear things up, I said, "Since you all think I'm a gold digger, let me show you my bank balance." I revealed my financial independence to everyone present. The room fell silent in disbelief. Martha accused, "Did you steal my son's money?" Tyler added suspiciously, "She must have taken it from you." Frustrated but calm, I replied, "I don't need to steal money from your son. This is all from my efforts. I recently accessed a trust fund from my grandfather. I plan to use it to buy a bigger house for us, but now that seems unlikely." Despite my explanation, Tyler suggested we could still buy the house. "It'll be a wonderful gift," he said. But I was firm. "This is not happening. Your family has insulted me for too long, and you've never stood up for me. Instead, you've let them spread lies about me." Tyler tried to downplay the situation, saying I was overreacting. But I stood my ground. "No, I am not overreacting. Everyone here knows what your family has been calling me. They were here when you allowed them to insult me during our engagement party." Finally, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't tolerate the disrespect anymore. "I want a divorce," I said sternly. Tyler tried to plead with me, but my mom intervened. "You never defended my daughter. It's time she ends this toxic relationship, she declared. We left the party, leaving behind a crowd of shocked guests. I was resolute in my decision to leave Tyler and move on. My mom's support was unwavering as we exited, marking the end of a painful chapter in my life. After the confrontation, I went to our home, gathered my belongings, and stayed with my mom for solace. The next day, I contacted my cousin, who was a lawyer, to start the divorce process. With the prenuptial agreement in place, it was straightforward, so I didn't have to share my assets with Tyler. The situation escalated when Tyler and his family came to my mom's house, demanding to talk. My mom stood firm and told him to leave. Tyler kept trying to contact me, alternating between apologies and threats. I saved all the messages, ready to file a restraining order if needed. My mom's unwavering support gave me strength. Tyler even tried to confront me at work, but security escorted him out. I decided to leave my job, as my growing business meant I no longer needed it. I resigned that day, ready to move forward. A week later, I served Tyler the divorce papers at his workplace. He went to my old office only to find out I had resigned. My former colleague said he kept sending flowers and gifts to my mom's house, which we returned. The harassment made me consider relocating. With my mom's encouragement, I found a new house in the next state, a sanctuary away from my ex. As I awaited the finalization of the divorce, the judge ensured it was smooth thanks to the prenuptial agreement. During the 5 months of our separation, I focused on healing and preparing for a new chapter in my life. I settled into my new home and changed my number to avoid Tyler's messages. I heard Tyler's life was falling apart. He blamed his parents for our breakup and faced setbacks at work. His colleagues distanced themselves, and his seniors were unhappy with the negative publicity. His parents spread infidelity rumors, but they didn't gain traction. In contrast, my life began to flourish. I focused on my business and enjoyed my newfound freedom. I started dating again, cautiously, but remained hopeful about finding someone who truly valued me. Though Tyler caused me pain, overcoming the challenges made me stronger. I looked forward to a brighter future, confident in my resilience and aware of what I wanted in relationships and life.
Hey there, I am a woman in my 40s. I've had my license as a real estate agent for more than 10 years. People often tell me I'm a great real estate agent. People tell me I'm a good real estate agent, but that doesn't mean I can tell you how much a house will go up or down in value. But based on my experience and careful research, I can tell by looking at the cadastral map what the land is worth now, how it could be developed, and how the land's surroundings could be used to make money. I can then predict whether the land's value will go up or down because of these factors. Making a judgment would be a better way to explain it. In any case, I've used these skills to help my in-laws when they were in trouble. My marriage was great. Everyone in my family was nice, including my husband, my father-in-law, and my other in-laws. They all loved me so much, even though I was their youngest daughter-in-law. Because my father-in-law had been sick for a long time, I was taking care of his assets. My wife's dad owned a lot of land and needed the help of a real estate agent who knew what they were doing. I raised my father-in-law's properties by reinvesting in good places while I was taking care of his lands. I didn't mean to be greedy by taking his land for myself or anything like that, of course. I was lucky enough to live with these nice people as if I were family. One day, I was just enjoying my life when my mother-in-law showed up out of the blue. I thought his mother was dead because that's all I had heard about her since I met my husband. Something very strange happened. Why did her family and my husband say she was dead when she was still alive? It was strange how my husband and his father treated my mother-in-law after seeing her again after many years apart. Even though she was married and had given birth to my husband, they all talked about her like she wasn't there, even though she was a mother and wife. I asked my husband straight out, "Is there something I should know? Because I'm naturally interested. Why are you curious?" I said, "Of course, I'm interested. Strangely, everyone told me that your mother was dead, but she is still alive and well. She also acts like she just got back from traveling after being gone for decades. Then you and your family are treating her as if she's a non-existent person. So it's so confusing," I told her. He didn't say anything. Yes, that's right. Now that I think about it, you never held a service for her. That means you knew your mother, I said. Even if she died on the street somewhere, we wouldn't have done anything to remember her, he said. Oh my God, do you think that woman is my mom? Isn't she somebody else? Is she not your birth mother or the woman who gave birth to me? I had a question. She gave birth to me, but she's not my mother. We decided she wasn't going to be her mother after she left us and moved in with someone else while my dad was in bed recovering from surgery. The truth is that I'm glad she left us and ran away. I wish she wasn't my mother even before she left, my husband said. I learned that my in-laws, who were always getting along, had a lot of problems in the past after hearing my husband's sad story. They thought my mother-in-law was dead when she was still alive. I'll start with the conclusion. It was because my mother-in-law was a bad wife and mother. When he was younger, my father-in-law was very poor. Now he owns a lot of land and is very rich. He was so hungry that he would be lucky to eat one meal a day. His wife hated how poor they were, so she left her family behind and ran away at night. His mom was never a good person, even before she ran away. My husband's dad worked as a day laborer on building sites and was often gone looking for work in faraway places. Her young children did all the housework while she sat around most of the time. It was worse when my father-in-law wasn't home when my mother-in-law did bad things. The bad weather would make her mad, and when the food arrived cold, she would lose it. Then one day, my father-in-law got so tired at work that he couldn't stand up and walk anymore. He was unable to make a living. Then my husband's mother-in-law left, leaving her sick husband and young children who still needed her care. They were just making up words when they said she was playing at night because she really took anything valuable in the house. She didn't pay attention to her husband or her young children, who were pleading with her for food. As a mother, it wouldn't be easy for her to take all the money and important things, right? All of my in-laws and my father-in-law had lived as if my mother-in-law were dead. Given the circumstances, who could still care about my mother-in-law after she came back after decades? I could 100% understand how they felt. But I have more of a fear and dislike for my mother-in-law because she left her family in the past. My father-in-law was dying after a long illness when my mother-in-law finally came back after being gone for decades. She didn't ask about her husband's health at first, though she asked for something else. You must be the youngest daughter-in-law. So what I heard was that you're a real estate broker and you have been managing the family properties, right? She sought answers to. How did you understand that? You don't need to know how I knew. How many homes does my husband own? It was my turn. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. All of my father-in-law's businesses are in his own name. Get permission from my father-in-law if you're really interested. Have you heard from my husband? I told her that the one who is married to your father-in-law is me. I heard. I added, why aren't you my mother-in-law? She's not even the mother of my husband and his family. Ha! Since he was a kid, my youngest son has been stupid. So how did he get a wife like you? Hello, my name is Mary, and I'm your mother-in-law. You should be careful because I don't think someone like you could be my mother-in-law. I'm not that simple, she said. Are you being territorial right now? I inquired. You'll find out soon whether it's my being territorial or not, she said. After that, I began to look into my mother-in-law's life. It was clear that she had come back with a different goal in mind, to steal the inheritance. But I still needed to be sure every once in a while. People can turn over a new leaf at the end of their lives after having done many bad things. After a bad event, I had to make sure that my mother-in-law's comeback after decades wasn't a one-of-a-kind case, and that she wasn't trying to get the inheritance like I thought she was. Then I had to figure out how to keep my in-laws safe from her evil greed. Also, who said, perhaps turns inevitably. Like I thought she would be, my mother-in-law was just like that. It wasn't a surprise that my mother-in-law left her family and ran away at night over the past few decades. She had been cheating on other people and stealing from them her whole life. People thought it was cute that she lived off of other people's money and never paid it back, even though she had a criminal record for many frauds, because she was a terrible con artist. Once I knew who my mother-in-law really was, I checked to see if the cops or FBI had put her on a list of people they wanted to catch. She had just gotten out of jail, so she wasn't on the list yet. I felt bad that my mother-in-law wasn't on that list. You might say that's a mean thing to think, but no matter how nice you are, you couldn't say that I was mean after hearing my story. It was too bad that my mother-in-law wasn't on the wanted list, but I didn't have time to make plans to protect my in-laws and me from my greedy mother-in-law, who was after the estate. It was on the day that my father-in-law died that I carefully told everyone what I knew about my mother-in-law. My in-laws and I were more concerned with holding a proper service than with coming up with a way to stop my mother-in-law's greed. But I was worried the whole time my mother-in-law's funeral was going on because she didn't show up. My mother-in-law finally showed up on the day of the funeral. If the cops had a list of people they were looking for, I thought the problem would be fixed right away. She sneaked up on them and looked around, hoping to find a basket full of money bags that people had left to send their condolences to the family. "You can't find the gift basket, can you?" I asked her with a smile. Next, I was going to look at the envelopes for the guests and sort the cash. Then I would talk about the gift. "The basket went away though, didn't it?" she asked. "What are we going to do, right?" I looked down my nose at her. "That's you. You're the one giving it to them instead of me," she yelled. Would I have to leave that out without checking? I already knew what kind of person you were. You're so sneaky. How much money do you think that is? I found out how much property my illness has left behind, I replied. Oh, you didn't even go to the funeral because you were eager to learn that, right? So when I see you, maybe things will turn out the way I thought they would. This is what I always do when I see you, I said. Be quiet. I'm not a queer person. In the eyes of the law, I'm the first person in line. Everybody should hand everything over to me, no matter what you and my kids say. That probably won't happen, so you should know that, she warned. Since you are married to my father-in-law, I promise you won't get any family money. I must admit that the warning I gave my mother-in-law was a bit of a trick. Even though my father-in-law was sick because he died so quickly, my in-laws and I were not able to make any plans for how to deal with my mother-in-law's greedy behavior. As expected, she started showing how greedy she was in order to get her husband's big inheritance all to herself. She sent proof to my in-laws right away that her marriage to my father-in-law was still legal. It showed that people knew about what was being sent to the court to get my father-in-law's will certified. Even though she had been tried many times for fraud while committing crimes, she knew a lot about how the court system worked, which helped her. I talked to a few lawyers on behalf of my husband and his family only. Everyone who worked as a lawyer gave the same answers. It is possible to keep your mother-in-law from getting the estate if you want to. That's great. They asked, what's the way? You need to go to court. You need to ask the court to officially declare that the marriage between your father-in-law and mother-in-law is over. In this way, you can avoid a trial. It won't be simple, they said. Then, I replied, that's probably why I said it happens. Since your father-in-law died, it will be even harder. They went on, it's probably the same no matter which lawyer you meet, because the courts aren't very friendly when it comes to divorce and inheritance issues. One piece of advice I can give you is that most of the time, pretty good deals are made in this situation. It won't be as stressful as going to court. We don't want an agreement that most people would think is reasonable in this case, they said. Okay, I'll be back when the trial is over. When my husband and his family heard that lawyers thought it would be hard to fight with his mother, they were upset. People should always be able to get in touch with the government. But as a real estate agent who deals with land and property, I found court fights very strange and hard to predict. Additionally, regular people like my husband and in-laws felt like they had no choice but to carry the weight. My husband and his in-laws did not agree to a ridiculous deal, though, because they did not want to recognize their mother's role as their mother. In order to cheer them up, I gave them a small bit of hope. Why should our silly game make us the victims? Since I was the youngest daughter-in-law, I had all the responsibility, so I asked him to trust me and not worry. That's how my husband and his in-laws chose to get ready for court. Of course, I wasn't crazy about my confidence. There was only one thing that was certain. I was sure that my mother-in-law didn't have enough money to go to court over the estate. There would be no reason for my mother-in-law to send proof that she is married or try to steal money from the money basket at my father-in-law's wake if she could afford a lawyer and go to court. And this time, too, my mother-in-law never did anything to change my mind. As if to show that she couldn't afford to hire a lawyer to go to court, she broke into my in-laws' house with some neighborhood bad guys, made a scene, and demanded that the property's title be transferred. The marriage license and driver's license that my mother-in-law waved at us were her weapons. She had no shame at all. She yelled, "Look, aren't you crossed off as your dad's wife? He has never formally split up with me. Yes, is that right? If you know, you should first change how you feel." "You jerk in front of my mom," she screamed. "This is how I think my father-in-law would act if he were still alive. You stole everything valuable from the house and then went away, leaving your sick husband and young children behind. How dare you drool over a house?" I replied, "Don't you think I know you're doing this because you're afraid to lose? You must have been told by the lawyers that I'm the most important person in the court case about the inheritance, right? So you must know something about the law since you've been to and from court. Okay, Mrs. X, convict. Is that not true?" I pushed back. "That was a long time ago. It's possible to mess up." "How many times have you been convicted of a crime, huh?" she asked. "I made a mistake." "Who believes that? Did your friends who are in prison tell you that? But you're just that to our family. A liar, a criminal, a former prisoner, and a bad thief who didn't show up for decades," I said. "Hey, lawyers said that. The marriage between you and my father-in-law will have been over a long time ago if you go to court. We won't have to pay you anything if that's proven. It's clear that you have no idea how hard it is to go to court because you talk too much. One thing I know for sure is true. You know how tough fights can get. You also don't have the money to hire a lawyer, which is why you're making a scene here. You want the fortune but don't want to go to court," I said. She stumbled and said, You, that's not us though. Remember that I am enough to carry that weight by myself. Stay away from our family if you don't want to see something worse. I'll be nice and buy you a hamburger, even a combo, if you promise that. Watch out," I said. "Let's see if you can be the last person standing and laughing." The things I said to my mother-in-law were planned ahead of time by my in-laws and me as a way to get my mother-in-law to bring those thugs to put even more pressure on us. They did exactly what we asked them to do so we could get real proof. They smashed things in the house and said they would beat all of my in-laws. All of those moves were caught on camera by cell phones that my in-laws kept hidden. To get what we wanted as much proof as possible that my mother-in-law was violent and made threats. But my husband got home in the middle of the chaos. He had left to prepare the case against my mother-in-law at the lawyer's office a few hours before she and those thugs started causing trouble. He held a piece of paper in his hands and had a shocked look on his face. My in-laws were also stunned when they saw the piece of paper. It was clear that they were feeling completely hopeless. The paper was quickly taken away and read with great pleasure by my mother-in-law. My husband found my father-in-law's will after the fact. What was written in the will was shocking. The notice said that my mother-in-law would be inheriting a big plot of land. If things keep going this way, the family will see my mother-in-law as their mother, and it will give my mother-in-law the land and everything else they own. The land that was left to the family in the will was so big that it could fit several soccer and baseball fields. I changed my mind after carefully looking at the land register address and started to look for my mother-in-law. "Let me tell you the truth," I said. "It was all a lie to talk about the court case. Since you are legally married to my father-in-law, I really didn't think we would win the hearing. You're good at going into great detail about things that are clear. Still, wouldn't having the land and it will be enough to make all your dreams come true. How do you know I'm a licensed real estate agent? It's big enough to hold a lot of soccer and baseball fields, I thought. Then there was a small smile on my mother-in-law's face. Using my energy to help me, I kept convincing her. To be honest, we don't think we can win the court case. However, if things go this way, you will also have to go through a lot of mental pain. Do not worry. Have you ever seen a rich person lose a case? It's something I've never seen before, doesn't it? This case will go all the way to the Supreme Court when it starts. Because of this, you won't be able to get your fortune until the hearing is over. First, I'm going to file an order to stop you from getting it. It will take at least a few years to go through all the requests to get the money. How could you wake up after all those years of worry when that great land was right there in front of you? What do you want to say? We should find a middle ground instead of going to court with each other. You will get the land and finish it instead. Please just write a note of promise. For the land written in the will, you will give up the rest of your inheritance and leave the rest behind. You can choose to take that huge piece of land right now without any trouble, or you can fight with everything you have for years and go to court to get everything written in the will. I want to stress again that the land mentioned in the will is huge, enough to fit many soccer and baseball fields, I said. If I sell that much land, I will have enough money to live on for the rest of my life without having to work. My mother-in-law said, "That's a great deal, kid. May I just sign and put my thumbprint here? Without a doubt, it will happen, right? Should we get ready right away with the ink stamp?" she asked excitedly. "Now you're finally making sense." "This is something you should have done a long time ago," I told him. My wife's mother got very excited and signed a promissory note that said she would only inherit the lands listed in the will. She gave up her right to receive the rest of the estate and signed it with her thumbprint. We had it notarized. She had no idea what bad things would happen next. My wife's mother called a few days after she signed a note promising to take only the land listed in the will. When I talked to my mother-in-law on the phone, her voice was weak and whiny. "As planned, sweetheart. I just came to check out the land I inherited. There's a problem." "How is the land? How is it that there are mountains on all four sides? There aren't any roads or houses nearby," she said. To be polite, I asked, "Is there anything else?" "A hiker says this land is a refuge of some kind," she said. "So, you're in the mountains now." I had a question. "That's correct." She told him, "I think I must have come to the wrong place." "I think you went to the right place. What if the land is a safe place? A place where nature can be protected. Don't even dream about growth or anything like that. Be careful as you go down. You could hurt a natural habitat, and that would add another crime to your record," I told him. After I said that, I put the phone down. Finally, my husband, my in-laws, and I cheered. How did that take place? Weren't we sucked dry by my mother-in-law the day she broke into my in-laws' house with those thugs? When I looked at my father-in-law's will, I saw that my mother-in-law got a huge piece of land. I was sure that the land was my father-in-law's punishment and a threat to my mother-in-law. It was true that the land was big enough for many baseball and soccer fields. What was important was the type of land it was on. It was in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains, away from any roads or towns. There have been no plans for growth at all. It was an area for protecting nature that could never be built on. That being said, the market price was already very low, and there was no chance that it would go up. I knew that because I had been in charge of my father-in-law's land for a long time. There was no way we didn't know it, but everyone did. I even got my mother-in-law to agree to give up other inheritances at the end of the fake plea. When my mother-in-law got the land that couldn't be quickly sold and turned into cash, she couldn't even pay the estate taxes. She lost all of her money. As planned, she called me one more time because she was so desperate. The caller made threats and asked for money. She asked, "Now, what are you going to do?" I laughed. It was written down that she would give up her right to other inheritances. And I even had video of her breaking into my in-laws' house and threatening and harassing us. I told her in a mocking way that she could do anything to go back to jail. With a sigh, my mother-in-law hung up the phone and didn't answer again that day. Finally, there was peace between my in-laws and me again. In today's language, my father-in-law thought even by working with his 4 sides and his daughter-in-law, who was a real estate salesman. Now I'm raising the value of the assets by taking care of my in-laws' fortune, which was a gift from my father-in-law. Because none of our kids are like my mean mother-in-law, my husband, and I have become great parents. How did she get away? Every year, she gets caught up in the Paladin mess because she hasn't paid her estate and land taxes on time. My in-laws and I had dinner together yesterday. All over again. I thought they were all very nice and kind people. That makes me miss my husband's dad even more. We love each other, and I want to spend the rest of my life living happily ever after. Father, please keep an eye on us. Please cheer for me and leave wise words in the area for comments. It really helps me when you click like and subscribe. Have a great day.
Yes, it's time for you to clean up the yard. Get outside pronto were the words that echoed from my mother-in-law at my in-law's house. I was always treated like a servant, especially at Christmas. After doing all sorts of housework, I'd find myself locked out in the yard. It was tough at first, but as the son's wife, I eventually accepted it. If I could endure it for a little while, I could go home. That's all I thought about, waiting for time to pass. One Christmas, thanks to my sister-in-law, I had an awakening. My name is Ariel. I'm 27 years old and I work in an office. My husband Tom is 33 years older than me. We've been married for 3 years. I'm an indoor person, preferring to relax at home on my days off. I'm not antisocial, just shy and not great with large groups. When I first met Tom, he was kind and reliable. I met him at a drinking party I attended with a friend. I thought it was a small gathering, but there were many strangers, and I wanted to go home right away. Tom was the one who helped me. I didn't know there would be so many people. Let's have a quiet drink over here, he suggested. He's a cheerful person and probably fine with crowds, but he stayed with me, chatting about various things. When it was time to move to the after party, he discreetly said, "It's better to go home now." He let me leave early. Such gatherings often exhaust me, but that day, thanks to him, I wasn't tired and actually had fun. He remained kind and reliable as we dated. As an indoor person, he took me to places I'd never seen before, showing me beautiful views. He was always gentle, escorting me wherever we went. In the 2 years we dated, we never fought. But after marriage, I saw a not-so-kind side of him. Perhaps it was inevitable. No longer just his girlfriend, but his son's wife. When he came home, "Is dinner ready? Can I take a shower?" He'd always ask. I work full-time, though I don't have overtime. Sometimes, depending on when my husband gets home, I can't get dinner or his shower ready in time. "I'll do it now. Just wait a little longer," I tell my husband, always rushing to prepare. If he realized things weren't ready, he'd let out a deep sigh and sit down on the sofa to watch TV. "Oh, beef stew again," he'd remark. I try to prepare in advance or get creative, but if it's the same menu, he gets upset, accusing me of slacking off. Even with simple dishes, my husband never helps. Instead, he leaves his socks under the sofa. He seemed like the epitome of a henpecked husband. We had never lived together before marriage, and I was taken aback by this behavior, as we hadn't experienced this when staying at each other's places. I'm not the most efficient, so while feeling guilty, I kept thinking about how to do household chores more effectively. Apart from this, he was as kind as he always had been. I always thought it was just me failing as his wife. This feeling intensified whenever we visited my in-laws' house. Their house is an hour's drive from ours. I only go a few times a year, but I get so nervous I can't sleep the night before. My father-in-law, Eric, a henpecked husband like my husband, always sits quietly in the same spot, reading the newspaper. Coffee, I'd often hear him say to Mary, my mother-in-law, as if used to it. Mary prepares the coffee even before being asked and serves it right away. I guess my husband grew up seeing Mary do this and expects the same from me. Eric, being a man of few words, shows little interest in me, barely speaking beyond greetings. Mary is a strong, talkative woman, having been a housewife for years. She efficiently does her chores, probably finding my ineptitude frustrating. When at the in-laws, I cook with Mary, but she often scolds me. "What are you waddling for? Get those vegetables chopped now." I can only reply, "I'm sorry, I'll do it right away." With each visit, I felt increasingly disliked by Mary, always being scolded no matter how careful I tried to be. I blamed myself for not improving. Even when my husband saw me scolded, he said nothing, just lounging around watching TV or fiddling with his phone. Overwhelmed by the constant scolding, I eventually talked to him about it. "You just need to be more efficient. Mom doesn't usually get that angry," he remarked. His words weren't wrong, but they only made me feel more dejected. One day, a year into our marriage, while cooking with Mary as usual, she finally snapped. "I'm so frustrated doing chores with you. I can't take it anymore. From now on, you'll do it alone. I'll just give instructions," she declared. It seemed Mary had reached her limit with me, scolding me every time. "All right, I understand. I'm sorry," was all I could say. Yet again, after apologizing, I ran to the bathroom in tears, feeling pathetic for upsetting Mary so much. I felt terrible for not being a good daughter-in-law. From then on, under Mary's orders, I did all the household chores alone when at the in-laws' house. Even though I worked by myself, Mary's scolding didn't stop. I was always apologizing. Despite my efforts, my husband and Eric just turned a blind eye. Christmas was particularly depressing. My husband has 3 siblings, and his unmarried brother would come home for the holidays. Sally, my sister-in-law, living far away, only comes back once a year and spends her time at her husband's parents' house. Every year on Christmas Eve, Mary cleans the house from top to bottom, prepares roast turkey, and gets ready for the Christmas feast. On Christmas Day, she cooks up a storm and waits for her 2 younger sons to return. The first year, having helped Mary before, now that I was doing chores alone, it meant handling everything. Just thinking about it was overwhelmingly distressing. On the way to the in-laws' house on Christmas Eve, I did the grocery shopping Mary had asked for, and the car was full. Upon arriving and finishing unloading, Mary immediately instructed me to start cleaning the windows. One cleaning task after another followed, along with preparing lunch. By evening, I was exhausted, yet the cleaning wasn't done. "What are you dawdling for? At this rate, we'll have to continue tomorrow." Mary kept scolding me. I was too tired even to apologize. When I finally finished cleaning, it was already dark outside. Then, I started preparing the roast turkey and cleaning up, and before I knew it, it was the next day. I hadn't even started preparing for tomorrow's meal. Sally hadn't instructed me on the preparations. "It needs to be ready by 11 a.m., she said before heading to bed. My husband and Eric had already fallen asleep. I spent the night desperately doing the meal prep. There was so much to do, and as I worked, I couldn't help but cry. Sally probably started cleaning and prepping not just on Christmas Eve, but several days before. It was unreasonable to expect me to do it all alone. I understood that, as a son's wife, I had to accept this, but I couldn't stop crying. Eventually, morning came while I was still prepping, and I had to start cooking right away to be ready by 11 a.m. I finished everything in time, feeling relieved that I managed to get it all done by 11 a.m. "Wow, this looks delicious." "Thanks, Mom," exclaimed the brothers. Their words irked me. Just as I thought I could finally sit down to eat, Mary called me. "What are you sitting down for? It's family time now. You need to clean the yard," Mary said, handing me a broom. I couldn't believe it but had no energy to resist. Silently, I took the broom and went to the yard. From inside the house, I could hear my family chatting and laughing, seemingly uncaring of my absence. The in-laws' house is in the north, and it was freezing that day. I didn't even have time to put on my coat, so I shivered uncontrollably as I tried to clean. Tears and a runny nose wouldn't stop. I kept telling myself it was my duty as a son's wife, just waiting for the time to pass. 3 hours passed before I was allowed back inside. I was so cold I could barely move, but Mary immediately said, "Hurry up with the cleaning." Shivering, I did the dishes. I knew I could go home soon, as my husband had to work from the second day. That thought kept me going. By the time I finished, it was time to leave. I was exhausted, having not slept since the day before. In the car on the way back, I cheerfully told my husband, "Am I going to spend every Christmas like this? I'm tired, cold, and I can't take it anymore. Just be more efficient, and you can sleep next year. Stick on lots of disposable heating pads. Stop crying. It's bad luck for Christmas." His cold response angered me. I was starting to resent him. No, I think I already disliked him. I had time off until the 3rd, but I got sick from being outside in the cold and spent the rest of my Christmas break in bed. This treatment continued every time I went to the in-laws' house. The next Christmas Eve, I tried to prepare in advance and get more sleep. I even brought lots of disposable heating pads in case I had to go outside. But Mary criticized my pre-made dishes. This is too salty. Start over, she said, rendering my efforts meaningless. Then she took all the heating pads from my bag. Oh, disposable heating pads. These will be perfect for church. Thank you, she said, taking them all. I couldn't sleep again because of the cleaning and cooking. After preparing the meal, I was sent outside to avoid catching the cold again. I wore a down jacket and took the disposable heating pads I had put in my pockets outside. Despite wearing thick clothes and carrying the heating pads, I couldn't stop shivering as it was snowing that day. About an hour later, a little boy came out of the house. Wow, snow, he exclaimed. I was surprised. There shouldn't be any children inside. Henry, put on your gloves, Mary called out. It turned out Sally had arrived unbeknownst to me while I was outside. Sally and her child had come to the in-laws' house. Apparently, she had a fight with her husband and didn't go to his parents' house this year. It was the first time I'd seen her since our wedding 3 years ago. When Sally saw me, she was surprised. Is that you, Ariel? She greeted. Hello, Sally. It's been a while. I greeted her, still shivering. Concerned about me trembling, Sally gave me some disposable heating pads from her pocket. Goodness, you're shivering. Why are you outside all this time? She asked, warming my hands. I was asked to clean the yard as the son's wife, I explained. I answered, and Sally, looking angry, said, What? What do you mean? Come inside, and you too, Henry. She ushered me into the house. Sally approached my husband and the others who were chatting. Hey, what's this about? Ariel was shivering. What if something had happened? She asked forcefully. Mom just asked her to clean the yard. My husband replied nonchalantly. Tom, you don't see anything wrong with this. And Mom, what's this about? Sally confronted my husband and her mother. Eric pretended not to know, and the two brothers-in-law looked uncomfortable. A son's wife should do what's expected of her. I just had her do her duties, Sally's mother replied sulkily. There's no such thing as a son's wife's duties in this world. How can you, a former daughter-in-law, not understand? You don't even realize how horrible this is. This is awful. I will never forgive you, and not just you. Everyone here, Sally said, and left the in-laws' house with her child. I stayed at a nearby hotel. While soaking in the pool, I told her everything. Sally, too, had been harshly treated by her mother-in-law and listened to me with tears. Ariel, you've been treated like a slave, haven't you? It's been tough. You don't have to endure it anymore. You can be free, she hugged me. I had always thought it was inevitable as a son's wife and endured many hardships, but finally, I realized it was abnormal. Feeling liberated, I also cried. Spending time with Sally, I felt the need to become stronger. After getting out of the pool, we ate the delicious hotel food, and exhausted from not sleeping since Christmas Eve, I fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, I saw missed calls from my husband but ignored them, choosing to explore the area around the hotel with Sally and her child. Throughout this, my husband and Mary kept calling. Ariel, it's okay to ignore him, Sally advised, so I didn't answer the phone and enjoyed sightseeing instead. Later that evening, when Sally said she was going home, I drove her to the station. As we said goodbye, Ariel, I've done enough payback for you. The rest is up to you, she told me. I didn't fully understand. Thank you for everything. I thanked her deeply and went home. When I got home, my husband was there, demanding, Hey, where have you been? I called you so many times. Ignoring his frantic concern, he continued, The house has been sold. It's my sister's doing. Confused, I asked, What? Sally? Sally has married the heir of a national real estate company. Our house and the in-laws' house were bought through Sally's husband's company. The two brothers-in-law rented through the same company, he explained. Sally, unable to forgive what happened yesterday, have listed our house and the in-laws' house for sale and filed eviction notices for the brothers' rentals. Within a month, the entire family had to move out, losing their home. I laughed at Sally's extraordinary actions, touched that she did all this for me. You know about this, right? Tell my sister to stop. She'll listen to you, my husband pressed. Laughing, I responded, I'll talk to Mom. He called Mary. It was hard to hear, but she sounded angry. It's called personal responsibility. I'm leaving this house too, so it doesn't matter to me if there's no house. The family can live happily outside, right? Like in a tent? It might be cold and shivering. I teased while saying this to my husband and Mary on the phone. What are you talking about? My husband exclaimed. "The joke's on me. I'll send you the divorce papers," I said, packed, and went to my parents' house. I called Sally on the way to tell her I was divorcing. "Way to go, Ariel. I knew you'd make that choice. Let's go to a hotel with a pool again," she said cheerfully. I'm grateful to Sally. If she hadn't come that day, I would have endured terrible treatment for decades. Later, we officially got divorced. My ex-husband's family lost their homes. We used to split living expenses and manage our own savings, which I didn't know, but apparently he had hardly any. He had to borrow money for a new house. He was blamed by the in-laws and borrowed more for their initial costs. After the divorce, his debts grew, and he started working part-time at night. Serves him right. The in-laws had lived in a spacious house thanks to Sally, but now had to settle for a small apartment. Embarrassed, Sally rarely leaves the house, living quietly. I started living at my parents' house. When I helped with chores, Mom was surprised at my efficiency. I thought I was clumsy and hadn't grown, but I was wrong. I became skilled in household chores during my 3-year marriage. Sally and I still keep in touch and occasionally visit hotels with pools. Talking to her gives me strength. Becoming the strong woman